So we are in the Talmud of Brachot on page 35, and we're asking a question. The question is, how does your sustenance, who takes care of your livelihood? Is it God or is it you? One verse says, I'm going to take care of your harvest. The other one says, no, you're going to take care of your harvest. As it says, you will gather your harvest. As it says, Ve'asafta deganecha, which is in the second chapter of the Shema. So the Talmud asks this contradiction. Who is the one gathering your harvest? And the Talmud says it depends. In one case, where God is the one gathering your harvest, when you fulfill the will of God, then God is going to do the work for you. When you do not fulfill the will of God, then guess what? You're going to have to gather your harvest. That's what it says. And now, we're going to continue. There's a discussion. Let's continue the Talmud. Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis taught us. Ve'asafta deganecha. It says in the verse, you will gather your crop. Ma. Go ahead, continue. Ma Talmud lomar. What does the Talmud, how does the Talmud explain this? Right, lefi shene'emar, since it says in the verse that you should not abandon the words of Torah. Efshar Adam choresh vezorea vekotzer aTorah. Continue reading. aTorah mateh aleha. Right? Is it possible that man, right? Ve'asafta deganecha. I'm sorry. Right? It says like this. Sefer aTorah ze mipicha. Yachol. Devarim kechtavan. So one verse says you will gather your crop. The other verse says you should not stop 1 minute from the study of Torah, not you and not your children. So now we have a contradiction here. Are you supposed to go to work? Are you supposed to go to yeshiva? What are you supposed to do? Is everybody quitting after this class tomorrow? So he says right away, Yachol. Is it possible? Dvarim kechtavan. Is the Torah speaking in a literate way that that's the way it has to be? You should never stop even for 1 minute, even to work. Talmud lomar. The verse says, Ve'asafta deganecha. So the verse says, Ve'asafta deganecha, you should gather your crop. Anheg. Anheg comes from the word linhog, which means conduct yourself. Anheg bahem. Minhag derech eretz. Conduct yourself in a way which is a practical, business-like way. You know, a normal human way. Which means the human way of doing things is that you have to work for the money, right? You have to work for the money. It's not just going to fall from the sky. Right? Unless you come from some foreign country and you think in America, dollars are falling from the sky and growing on trees. So this is the opinion, divrei. These are the words of Rabbi Ishmael. These are the words of Rabbi Ishmael. Now we have Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Shimon, the son of Yochai. What does he say? He says, Omer. He says, Efshar. Is it possible? Adam, man. Choresh, he's going to plow. Besha'at charisha, at the moment that you need to plow. Right? There's a season you need to plow. Vezorea, and he's going to sow. Besha'at zriya, and then he's going to sow when it's the season of sowing. Vekotzer, and he's going to harvest. Besha'at ketzira, at the moment that you need to harvest. Vedash besha'at disha. Vezore besha'at haruach. Right, and he's going to, when one of the processes in order to extract the grain from the wheat is to trample it. So there's a time where you need to trample the grain where it's soft enough. but it's not hard enough. And like this, you extract all the grains of a flour, and then vezore, and then he needs to throw it in the air at the moment that there's the wind. What they do is, this is very important because this has to do with Shabbat, with the 39 labors of Shabbat, is that after they trample on the grain, right? They take the grain and they throw it in the air. The wind takes the parts of the grain which is lighter, which are the tige, how do you call it? What holds the grain. It says that in the laws of Shabbat, right? It says over there that why does the work of Azorea ve'achoresh? It says in the order that you sow and then you plow. That's what it says in the laws of Shabbat in the chapter in page 72 in the Talmud of Shabbat. So it says, why does it say first? The Gemara asks a question, why does it say sow and then plow? You first plow and then you sow. It says, no, in Israel the earth is very hard. So you have to plow, you have to sow, and then you have to plow a second time. So now Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is bothered. Heck, 1 second. He's going to work for 2 months on this, on plowing. Afterwards, he's going to work another 2 months on sowing. Right, or 1 month, whatever it is, and then he's going to work on preparing the grain, and then he's going to a person. I mean, how much can a person do already? I mean, this is going to be a total waste of Torah. So right away he says, right, Beshat Haruach Torah, the Torah matehe alea. What's going to happen with Torah? People are going to study Torah. People are going to be busy with their business. Run here, run there, do this, do that, and what's going to happen with Torah? Right? You got it? So he says, Ella. So he says, now Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to explain, Bizman she'Yisrael, at the moment that Israel, the Jewish people, osin retzono shel makom, they are fulfilling the will of Hashem, melachtan na'asit al yedei acherim. Then the work of the Jewish people will be done through others. Right? It will be done through others. Shenema. And obviously, again, remember the way of the Talmud. The way of the Talmud is that if I'm going to say a statement, I can't just say a statement because I feel like it. You know what? I feel that, you know what, if you're going to do what Hashem wants, He's going to take care of you. Very, very nice, you're very kind, but you're not paying my bills. So he says, no, I have a verse for this. What does the verse say? So the verse in Isaiah says, Ve'amdu zarim, strangers will stand, Ve'ra'u tzonechem, and they will shepherd your flocks. It's great. So here we see here that there's going to come a time where the nations of the world will be serving us, which means that if I'm doing what I want, what I need to do, well, not what I want, what I need to do as a Jew, then the nations of the world will be, others will be taking care of my parnasah. I won't have to do anything. So he says right away, okay, so what's the question that you all have now? We have 2 opinions. Let's go back. Let's review here. See on the board, just behind me. Very good. We have the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael. We have the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Right? So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was pretty holy, right here on the Zohar and everything. So we know what his opinion is. It's very easy to remember. He says, you know what? It says you should study Torah. If you're going to quote unquote, waste your time working, the Torah is going to be abandoned. God forbid what could happen. You do what you need to do. At the moment that the Jewish people are doing what they're supposed to do, they don't need to work. You just study Torah, everything will be fine. Right? Rabbi Ishmael says, my friend, it's true we have to study Torah, but we're humans. And since we're humans, we have to behave and conduct ourselves and make a human effort. And you have to study Torah and work. So we have 2 opinions.
Sounds like you're setting up a class structure. Shimon Bar Yochai is saying, well, the elite Jew will study Torah, and who's the other rabbi? Whatever.
Rabbi Ishmael.
The Ishmael said, no, I mean, we have to work. So we're not an elitist group. We have to work for our parnasa and on our spare time called one of study Torah.
Okay. So basically we have those who are fulfilling the will of God and those who are not fulfilling the will of God.
It's only fulfilling the will of God because someone else will be providing them with the food and the parnasa that they need to sustain themselves. So that's what I'm saying. It sounds like you're setting up a very elite class of scholars, and then there's the common Jew.
Did you, Michael, study today's Tanya?
Yeah.
Do you remember what it says in today's Tanya?
About the Benjamin.
No, what it says at the end of today's Tanya. That Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in a very, very special place. And somebody knocked and said, are you of the type that is able to transform darkness into light, bitterness into sweetness? You're allowed to come in. Anybody else is not allowed to come in. You remember that statement? And then,
Maybe I'm on the wrong date.
okay, so that's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So we're going to explain here Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Ishmael. Let's explain exactly where they're coming from and what are they saying. But before we go to the deeper explanation, and thank you for mentioning what you did, let's continue in a second. Okay, so basically we have those who are fulfilling the will of God, they don't need to work. Those who are not fulfilling the will of God, those who are not doing the will of God, they need to work. Okay, so let's continue. So he says, "Ubizman Israel." Yeah. But when the Jewish people are not doing what they're supposed to, then their work is going to have to be done by them. As it says in the verse. Again, I have a proof for you. He says, furthermore, not only that, you're even going to do the work of others. If you're not going to be studying Torah, which means you have enough time on your hands to put into work, and you're so busy putting into work, we're going to add you a load of work that you're not only going to do your work, we're going to give you the work of others too.
You're right, 100%.
Okay,
not only Jewish, the Goyim.
Oh, 1 second, we're not done. He's going to go further. And he brings a verse, and that verse is not so gracious. Shene'emar, as it says in the verse, ve'avadata, you will serve et oivecha. You will serve your enemy.
That's what I said now. I didn't read it.
Exactly. You see?
I already learned once.
Maybe. Amar Abaye, and now stop. Guys, I want you to examine yourselves. And I want you to ask yourselves, which category are you in? Are we in? I'm going to include myself with you guys. Right? Which category are we in?
Terrible.
Obviously, it seems that we're in the working category. We're still in the working category. So if we're still in the working category, it must be that we're not fulfilling God's will. Because it says, a verse that says, in the second paragraph of the Shema, Ve'asafta deganecha, you will gather your harvest yourself, meaning you need to work. So you're not fulfilling the will of God, and therefore you need to work. Get it clear? Is that clear for everybody? Let's continue, and now Abaye is going to really console every single one of us here. Okay? Amar Abaye. You all have it? Yeah. Amar Abaye says, Harbe asu ke Rabbi Ishmael. Many try to do like Rabbi Ishmael, to work and study. Ve'alta beyadan. And they were able to get the upper hand, meaning they were able to do it, and they were able to be successful at both. Ke Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and some tried to be like Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, ve'lo alta beyadan, and they were not able to be successful. Amar le Rabbanan, let's stop here. So here we have this is a very, very, very classical Talmudic discussion between Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And we see here the particularities. We have two opinions. One which seems very moderate, another one which seems very out there, elitist, how do you call it, holy, right, out of this world. Where are we? I'm going to now give you a prayer book, and I'm going to ask you to read the second chapter of the Shema, which is the proof of Rabbi Ishmael. I'm going to ask you to please examine what he said and his proof. We are in the Tehillat Hashem Sidur,
42.
on page
43.
42 at the bottom. Read the translation, please. Michael, you read a good English. 1 second. Let's read. Read the first. Read the first chapter of the Shema. Let's read the whole Shema. Let's do it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Michael, in English.
You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you today shall be upon your heart. You shall teach them thoroughly to your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign upon your hand, and they shall be a reminder between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gates.
Stop. This is the first chapter of the Shema. Very good. Let's go now to the second chapter of the Shema, where the verse which is the support of Rabbi Ishmael, which says that you have to work when you're not fulfilling the will of Hashem, you'll have to work and gather your harvest. Let's read that second chapter.
And it will be, if you will diligently obey my commandments, which I enjoin upon you this day, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. I will give rain for your land at the proper time, the early rain and the late rain, and you will gather in your grain, your wine, and your oil. And I will give grass in your fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be sated. Take care lest your heart...
Stop. Let's stop right there. We don't need to read any more of that. Don't you have a question? What is the question you have? Look at the second chapter carefully. Reread it and ask yourself a question.
Well, it's basically the same question we started with the beginning of the class tonight. If you obey the commandment, and one commandment says that you should study Torah, and then he goes on to say, but if you love your God with all your heart, and you perform all this work, manual work, and your Torah work, then Hashem will provide you the ability to sustain yourself.
Without you having to gather your crop. We said, if we do the will of God, God takes care of you.
Well, I said, and you will gather in your grain, your wine, and your oil. So if you do everything at the right time, Hashem's going to do things for you.
This is you will gather, which means you are going to want to be the one working.
Right.
If you don't do the will of
As I said,
Hashem.
it sounds like the same questions that are being posed.
Well, 1 second. 1 second. So what's the question? What's my question? See, I know it's on the tip of your tongue. I know it's on the tip of your tongue. And Yoram, if you just looked inside, you would get it right away.
Go for it.
You said here that was to study Torah. In no place it says study here. It says to obey the commandments. And
Yeah, obey the commandments means to study Torah and to
But
do
the commandment is to study Torah.
Yes.
But it doesn't say you have to go work and then to obey the commandment.
Look at the second chapter, please. Look at the second chapter, the beginning of the second chapter of the Shema.
אם שמע תשמעו אל מצוותי אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום מצווה.
Think of what you're saying.
I mean, it mostly says that he will provide only in one
Command.
sentence.
He
does
command
say,
us to study Torah.
You will gather your crop means, according to our Talmud, that we have to work.
What we physically have to do.
We have to physically do it ourselves. When do we do that? According to the Talmud, when we are doing the will of God, and when we're not doing the will of God.
When we are.
According to the Talmud.
Oh, to the Talmud, sorry.
We are doing what?
I told you it's on the tip of your tongue. Tzvi, say the question. Listen carefully.
So according to the Talmud, if we obey God, we study Torah and everything else, Hashem will provide. We don't have to do anything, right? We don't have to gather our crop or anything like that. But here in Shema, it says exactly that. If you study Torah, you obey Hashem, you will have to gather your crop.
So it's a contradiction. Exactly. And when you will listen to my statutes and my commandments, you have to go work. So how is that? Isn't that a problem?
Is he qualifying the commandment by saying to love Hashem with all your heart? I mean, does love really translate? It's a sense of being as opposed to an action of studying Torah.
So, if you remember on Shabbat, I read from the Rambam,
Right.
from Maimonides, and we said, how is it possible for one to be able to love God through the study of Torah, through him being immersed in the study of Torah? You're going to be able to love God. So of course, the love of God translates itself in doing His commandments and studying Torah. So here, let's go back. So everybody gets it very clear. Rabbi Ishmael says, you know what? You have to do your work. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, yeah, that's when you're not doing what God wants. You're not doing the will of God. You're going to have to go to work. 1 second. Our verse in the Shema says, look at the second chapter. How does it start? With which words? Which means, in English?
And it will be, if you will diligently obey.
Which means you're obeying, you're doing the will of God. You just said, and in that same chapter where it says, when you will obey, you will go and harvest. Which means that you're doing a work. But if we just said in the Talmud that if you're doing the will of God,
you don't have to do anything.
You have to do anything. Is that a contradiction? How do we use that verse as a proof? Do you understand the question, Netanya? Yes or no? Repeat the question.
My question is,
One second. Netanya, what's the question?
The Talmud says that if you will study the Torah, then you don't need to do anything to provide it.
If you're going to do the will of God.
Study the Torah.
Yeah, if you do, no, it doesn't say study Torah. It says, Otziin retzono shel makom, when you will do the will of God.
Okay.
Then, at that moment, you don't have to
work. And if you do the opposite, you will have to
you still have to
for yourself, but also for all the others.
Yeah, and you have to, you have to go out now. This verse that you have to go out and work, where is it? It's in the second chapter of the Shema. And how does that chapter start? It starts by the words that say what?
If you would obey.
What? The second chapter of the Shema starts with the word, which means what?
If you will obey or listen to...
And it says over there, you're going to have to work. So it's a contradiction. In the Talmud, we say, if you work, you don't have to gather your crop. Hashem will do it for you. In the Shema, it says, Vayem shamua tishmeu v'asafta deganecha. If you're going to listen...
No, but here it says, walk the walk of God, not to walk.
Yeah, if you do the will of Hashem, v'asafta deganecha, you will have to go in your field and gather your crop. Yeah, that's when you do all this. What's going to be the blessing is that you're going to have to go to your field and gather your crop.
No, and it says super clear here that you will gather your grain, your wine, and your oil. So definitely picking up something.
I will
so you're working.
Someone will give it to you. You'll have to go and go fetch it yourself. You're going to have to sow, you're going to have to plow, you're going to have to do all the things that we
And
say.
then you see it's very difficult. Then you stop. You quit the work and you study just.
And then you have no parnasa.
Then you have the parnasa fish time.
You understand? You understand it, Tanel, or it's not
First
clear?
of all, you need to feel what is how hard to spend your lifetime.
The word
work.
V'asafta
You know
deganecha,
how hard it is to work. If
the
you
words
work,
V'asafta deganecha,
now you
you will
stop.
gather your crop.
It's like kind of unemployment. You get
Where does it come
unemployment
from?
and you study
It
Torah.
comes to tell you that you have to work.
Okay.
Where is that verse? That pasuk is in the Shema. And the Shema says, when you will listen to the voice of Hashem, you will gather your crop.
So it's the opposite from the Talmud.
Exactly. So now,
But
I'm going to ask you,
Very intelligent.
in order to find the solution to this problem, I'm going to ask you, what is the difference between the first paragraph of the Shema and the second paragraph of the Shema? What difference is there?
It's basically saying when you have the time, when you're not busy,
Where does it say that?
you shall teach them thoroughly to your children. So you don't see your children 24/7. You shall, teach when you walk on the road, when you're just not studying Torah.
No, you are going to teach. You're going to be learning Torah when you walk, when you wake, when you go to sleep. No, we're gonna leave you 1 second without Torah.
Right.
When you're home, when you're on
Look
your
at
way,
the. I didn't ask you what it says in one and what it says in the other.
What the difference?
I would like you to see something that looks exactly the same in 2 chapters, but there's one little difference. One little difference between the first and the second chapter. What is it?
Let me read. It's with all your might.
Oh. The first paragraph of the Shema, we say, Ve'avta et Hashem Elokecha, you will love the Lord your God, B'chol levacha, with all your heart, U'v'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, U'v'chol me'odecha, with all your might. Your might. Look at the second chapter.
"Ve'avdo b'chol levavchem, b'chol nafshechem."
It says
Yes.
there, you will
With your
love
heart.
God with all your heart and all your
So,
soul. It doesn't say with all your might.
Might.
One level.
One level of difference. Besides that, what other difference is there in the way it talks in the first chapter and the way it talks in the second chapter? Let me ask you, who is it talking to?
First chapter, he's telling you to
the
do
father, to the man of the family.
Are you the man of the family?
No, but the second talks to the people.
One is talking to a singular you. A singular in English is very hard, the word you, because in every other language there's a difference between you as a singular and you as a plural.
Yeah, not in English.
Here, I don't know how they translate it in order to. You should.
Should be a point.
Okay. Okay, so
Yeah, they use you in both.
yeah.
You can't
So in English,
differentiate
you
it
can't
in
make a
English.
difference between both. The second paragraph is talking to the mass, to everybody. The first chapter is talking to the individual. I'm going to repeat. Look at me for a second. The second chapter is talking to the assembly, to the majority. The first chapter is talking to the individual.
So this is the difference between Yochai and Ishmael.
Exactly. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, when he speaks, he says many people tried like Rabbi Ishmael to the mass. You will work and study Torah, and they succeeded. So the mass worked. But Rabbi
Shimon
Rabbi
Bar
Shimon
Yochai.
Bar Yochai, only very, very few individuals succeeded. So what is the difference? The difference really is, what does it mean to fulfill the will of God? I can listen to God. There's listening to God, like it says in the Shema. You will listen. And then there is fulfilling the will of God. My example for this is, Friday afternoon, I ask my children, set the table for Shabbat. Set the table for Shabbat. I come an hour later, they're still fighting. No. I come an hour later, right? They set the table for Shabbat. The only problem is that the plates are not symmetrical. The fork is on one side, it's not really straight. The cups don't have the flowers in them. The Kiddush cup is missing. The chairs are not really straight. Is everything on the table? It's a 99%. They forgot to put a plastic on the tablecloth. Did they set the table? They set the table. Did they listen to what I told them? Yes, they listened. Did they fulfill my will? No, they didn't. My will was to have the most beautiful Shabbat table. Right? When I told you clean the room, I didn't mean that the room should look clean. I meant clean the room. Right? So there are those who are going to serve God and they're going to listen to God with all their heart and all their soul. And then there is those who are going to step out of their comfort zone and they're going to give it all their life. Everything they got with all their might. And that's fulfilling the will of God. Mesirut nefesh, self-sacrifice. Of course, I don't feel to do so many details, but I'm going to do what God really wants from me. And this is a major, major difference at looking at God. Right? I would say, if I could push myself in that direction, that it's the difference between looking at a more through the eyes of mysticism, of Hasidism, and looking through the eyes of just Torah, through the eyes of the revealed aspect of Torah. Through the revealed aspect of Torah, if I put on tefillin, I fulfill the will of God. I mean, I did what God asked me to do. Right? If I said the Shema and I put my tefillin in the right place, and I did what God, I listened to God. But was that the will of God? Wasn't the will of God that at the moment that you put on tefillin, you have a connection and a relationship with Him? It's like it becomes suddenly, is it a physical relationship I'm having with, I'm sharing something physical with my spouse? Or am I having an emotional connection, an emotional relationship? Is it me doing what you said you want? Or me listening to really what your true desire is? It's two types of way of seeing things. That's what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, when he says, you know what, you want to do the will of God, just completely give yourself over, forget about materialism. Then you'll be blessed. Next week, what I want to do with you guys is take you on a journey with Rabbi Akiva and see how Rabbi Akiva himself became a very, very wealthy man.
Just to study.
By
Study Torah.
No. And how his life, through his life, led him to a certain path that, first of all, how Rabbi Akiva was able to reframe situations, and how he became from the little Akiva, the Rabbi Akiva, that was from a wealthy man to a poor man to a very, very, very wealthy man. Next week.
בעזרת השם, January 4th.
Here, you want to take this
My-
and close it?
My son's birthday. So this is going to be a session.